What if I told you that the skills gap plus 5 more of America's biggest problems are all connected and could be solved by doing one simple thing: giving up? Would you believe me? When I was born in 1967, there were 3.5 billion people on Earth. Now there's 7.5 billion. The world's population has more than doubled. And with all these people, you know what else doubled? The number of professions. As a kid, they told me I could be a doctor, a lawyer, or a baseball player. Now they've got full-stack Java developers, commodity supply chain traders, and blockchain cybersecurity analysts. So in the past 50 years, the number of people doubled, and the number of professions doubled. But you know what else more than doubled? Information. According to Google, 5 exabytes of data were created between the dawn of civilization through 2003. But now, that much information is created every 2 days. 90% of the data in the world has been created in the last 2 years alone. Our current output of data is roughly 2.5 quintillion bytes a day. So, now we've got more individuals, more industries, and way more information than at any point in the history of the planet. So what did we do? Well, we did what Americans have always done when faced with a challenge. We decided we're going to learn it, and we're going to learn it all. So, our educational system decided if we're going to learn all this stuff, we're going to have to start earlier and finish later. So we took kindergarten, and then added pre-kindergarten, then preschool, then advanced early childhood day school. I tell you, we're this close to referring to the uterus as home womb, all right? And then on the back end, they push for college, then college for everyone, then grad school, then doctorate programs. So kids today go from pre-K to post-grad, and guess what? They still can't swallow it all. There's just too much information. We're literally drowning in data. I call it information asphyxiation from education. How much education? Well, last count, student debt currently stands at a record $1.5 trillion. But here's the worst part. With all this information, all this education, all this preparation, we still have a skills gap. How is that possible? I'll tell you how. America's central educational philosophy is all wrong. It's completely upside down, inside out, and backwards. In fact, it's the complete opposite of what it should be, based on the number of people, professions, and petabytes of data being created. The painful reality is this. America has been so consumed with trying to learn almost everything that they end up with workers good for almost nothing. Our current educational system is designed to graduate millions of broad, shallow generalists, while employers are looking for deeply skilled, highly focused specialists. It's true. America's increasingly diverse industries and advanced professions are demanding heightened levels of specialized skills, training, and deep domain expertise. But instead of higher education, our schools are obsessed with wider education. America's educational philosophy hasn't kept up with reality. We're still trying to learn it all. Now we're trapped, attempting to straddle 2 diametrically opposed worldviews, pitting educators against employers, with the individual stuck, held hostage right here in the middle, all between these 2 opposing forces, one pressing forward to the future, one clinging to the past. Why? Because our current educational approach is the exact opposite of what it should be. Instead of shallow, superficial understanding of everything, students should be prepared with a deep understanding of a few things, focused around a career path aligned with their unique gifts, strengths, and abilities. Want proof? According to a new report from the Committee for Economic Development, in May 2018, there were a record 6.6 million job openings in the U.S., which matches the number of unemployed Americans seeking work. Did you hear that? 6.6 million job seekers and 6.6 million jobs. The problem isn't the number of jobs or the number of job seekers. It's the match between the two. In fact, as of today, there's actually more jobs than job seekers. The report goes on to say, quote, "This disconnect can be attributed to a lack of communication about skills development and career pathways." After their year-long national listening tour, they reported there was, quote, "near universal sentiment that the education system was not preparing students to compete in the labor market. And the underlying theme is unmistakable. There is a significant gap between what parents and employers want and what schools are delivering." Boom! There it is. And now, the aha moment America's been waiting for. Are you ready? Say it out loud with me. I can never learn all there is to know. One more time, louder. I can never learn all there is to know. So give up. Now take a deep, cleansing breath. How's that feel? Pretty good, right? Kind of free. Give up. Give up this irrational notion of thinking if you just try hard enough, you can learn it all. Why? Because once America gives up this flawed, emotionally charged, and completely irrational idea of thinking that our educational systems need to teach every kid everything, we get to introduce a radically rational approach. Specialize. Why? Because you can't be a jack of all trades when there's 50,000 trades. So instead, we introduce a new educational philosophy, which is the exact opposite of our existing model, whereby instead of forcing students to become broad, shallow generalists, we let them specialize in their chosen area of expertise. Okay, Doug, that sounds great. So what does this look like in real life? Okay, how about a case study? The U.S. military is the strongest fighting force ever created. How do they do it? Well, first, every single recruit starts by going through 8 weeks of basic training where they learn the basics, where they participate in a variety of skills, where they're observed and evaluated on their performance. But what makes our military great is that after their 8-week boot camp is over, soldiers move on to something called AIT, Advanced Individual Training, to, quote, learn the skills to perform your job. Did you hear that? They're connecting skills to jobs. After basic training is over, the next step is to identify and master their specialty skills, which connect directly to their job. Why? Because Uncle Sam recognizes it takes all kinds to make the Army work. And having soldiers focus in their area of natural strength results in organizational optimization, matching the smart, skinny soldiers with logistics, the culinary kids with cooking, and those tough, aggressive soldiers with hand-to-hand combat missions. So, what can the Army teach academia? Easy. Stop trying to be all things to all people and specialize. America can make a huge leap forward by following the preparation model used by our military, by having every student go through 8 weeks, 8 years, of what we'll call basic training, learning reading, writing, arithmetic, and a cross-section of other technology-infused coursework, and then intentionally evaluating their strengths and weaknesses, and then proactively steering them towards a specialized pathway, pulling them towards their areas of strengths and away from the areas of weakness. Nobody cares that Tom Brady can't bench press 400 pounds or run a 4.2 with a 40-yard dash. He'll be in the Hall of Fame because the pattern recognition hardwired in his brain allows him to hit a receiver 50 yards down the field in stride, right on the money. Right now, our educational system is wired to hold kids back and slow them down by focusing on their weakest link, rather than driving them forward, pulled by what they do best. How do I know? Well, when my 2 kids went in for progress reports, they weren't really progress reports at all, but rather lack of progress reports, as the meetings were mostly about weaknesses that need to be fixed. Isn't it about time education did the opposite? And instead of calling in parents just to say, Audrey has a C- in algebra. Better get a tutor. But rather, I've been teaching for 15 years, and your daughter is the best natural writer I've ever had in my class. Have you considered having her specialize in research or journalism? See the difference? So, to review, we've got more individuals, more industries, and way more information than at any point in the history of the planet. And America's solution? More education. Let's learn it all. Here's a question. Have you ever heard anyone say, America has an education gap? No. It's always a skills gap. Always. So, if we're going to solve America's skills gap, maybe we should start by asking, what's a skill? Well, according to one dictionary, a skill is a type of work requiring special training and knowledge. Another one says, a skill is an ability acquired through deliberate, systematic, and sustained effort to carry out complex activities or job functions. So, in a nutshell, a skill requires focused, intentional, and deliberate action. Acquiring a skill means focusing on a specialized task for a sustained period of time to acquire expertise. Do you see the problem? America is consumed with delivering a wider education, teaching everyone a little bit about everything, rather than a truly higher education, focusing on acquiring a deep expertise in a specific area. Remember, we've got 6.6 million job openings and 6.6 million job seekers. That's a massive and growing mismatch between education and employment. Okay, I'll be honest. I didn't want to do this talk. I didn't. It finally got to the point where I realized I had to, because nobody else was connecting all the dots to see the solution. And I couldn't just stand by and watch the exploding student debt and the horribly overlooked workforce participation rates, which lead to frustration between kids and their parents, and then despair, opium and drug addiction, finally suicide and death. Millions of Americans who have just given up. Remember that article from earlier? This is amazing. That same article referenced the word path 26 times, and the word pathway 17 times. That's 43 mentions of path or pathway in the single article. That's like twice on every page. What does that mean? What it means is this. This document proves that America is begging for, screaming for, education and career pathways. It's right there hidden in plain sight and right in their own words. So here's the question. What's a path? It's the same thing as a skill. Think about it. Think of a path in the woods. A path is the intentional and deliberate act of focusing over a sustained period of time in a particular direction toward a specific outcome. But here's the problem. A path means saying no to most things in order to say yes to the most important things. Again, a path means saying no to most things, good things, in order to say yes to the most important things. Why? Because when you don't focus, you wander off the path to keep your options open, what happens? You get lost in the woods. Unfortunately, our current educational system is set up to make it as hard as possible to define a path and follow it. For years in high school, kids are forced to take a broad base of disparate courses in order to become well-rounded. And even in college, nearly half the required courses to graduate are not specialized for a specific major. The result? A nation of broad, shallow generalists with $1.5 trillion in student loans who have no marketable skills because instead of a pathway, they've been forced to wander from course to course to course in an endless forest of information. In fact, just think about how crazy some college majors really are. How about this one? Business management. So, Ryan spends $100,000 to get a degree in business management. What does he expect? That he'll walk into a company a month after graduating and he'll say, Ryan, welcome, come on in. We've been waiting for a 21-year-old to come in and manage our business. Oh look, it says you've had a semester of anthropology and finance. We're so lucky to have you. Have a seat. I hope this corner office works for you. Crazy, right? So how did we get here? In my book, Specialist Nation, A Survival Guide for America, I tackle the question, why are the arts considered liberal, as in liberal arts? The piece goes on to describe that liberal, in this context, has nothing to do with politics, but rather harkens back centuries, originating from the root word liberty, and used to describe studies that people undertook freely, in contrast to activity necessary to earn a living or train for a technical job or profession. You see the problem, right? We've got thousands of colleges and universities stuck in a Renaissance-era time warp, featuring liberal arts curriculum and degrees in broad-based philosophy, and graduating millions of massively indebted generalists studying topics that should only have been pursued if their families were very wealthy and this educational pursuit was simply a way to expand their intellectual horizons, studying the classics during their hours of leisure. The resulting tragedy is both sad and predictable. A depressing, slow motion, years-long realization by students and their parents of the disconnect and mismatch between the degree they've invested in and what the marketplace now requires to get a meaningful job. But by then it's too late. In hindsight, it turns out that instead of waxing poetic about studying the classics and parroting back the Kool-Aid of a broad-based education, they should have been refining their focus and using that time to train for a specialized profession. The painful lesson today's graduates are learning is that the underpinning philosophy of this kind of generalized education is fine. And don't get me wrong, I've got nothing against liberal arts degrees. I've got them. As long as there's no pressure or requirement to instantly translate it into gainful employment or income. I mean, think about it from an employer's perspective. They have a problem that needs to be solved by a person with a very specific skill set. So they advertise, and these kids show up, and the employer asks, "So, Ashley, what can you do?" And she says, "Well, I'm a critical thinker." And the employer's like, And I've got soft skills, and I've got 1 semester of Western Civ and animal studies and rock climbing. And it'd be funny if it wasn't so sad and true. Now, I can totally understand why smart people still don't get this. In fact, in the middle of that same research study, one person who ran multiple firms said, quote, "My message to parents is to have their kids develop a broad skill set to provide more flexibility for a career." And then you watch famous CEOs on TV say, "I'm looking for leadership qualities and good communication skills." And they're right. But here's the problem. In most companies, the CEO doesn't do the hiring. If the CEO did the hiring, the job listing would read, "Wanted, leader." Have you ever seen a job posting like that? I haven't. In fact, just think of the millions of applicants you'd get if you posted on Monster. Wanted, wide skilled workers. Cutting-edge firm seeks generalists with a broad-based, well-rounded education, preferably with a major that ends in ology. Must be massively in debt and a critical thinker, as you'll only be worth $20,000 to us. So you'll have to think critically about whether to use your salary to pay your rent, student loans, buy food, or watch Netflix. So again, the CEOs who say these things aren't doing the actual hiring. The hiring manager does the hiring, and their job is to find people very specific skills to fill a very specific role. And if your resume doesn't include those skills, you won't even get seen because you'll never make it through their applicant tracking software. And I hate to break it to you, but having 100 soft skills won't matter if you don't have the 5 hard skills they're hiring. But Doug, I thought being a generalist and keeping my options open was a good idea. It's not. Employers are looking for highly focused domain experts with usable skills on day one. So, are you saying we don't need any generalists? Well, let's go back to our example. Armed forces have 2 million soldiers, but less than 1,000 are generalists. In fact, you know what we call them? Generals. Think of a pyramid. Less than 1% are generals, which means over 99% aren't generals. Nobody starts out in the military as a general. That's your reward after decades of diligence and hard work. The problem is, our educational system is structured to create millions of generalists, all competing for this tiny fraction of general jobs when they should be graduating specialists, prepared with a specific skill set which will enable them to enter the workforce and then, over time, with hard work and a little luck, work up to a more generalized role. One of my favorite thinkers in America today is a guy named Mike Rowe. You know him from TV's Dirty Jobs, Somebody's Got to Do It, and his new show, The Returning the Favor Effect. Mike's been talking about these problems for a long time. In fact, the URL for his Mike Rowe Works Foundation is profoundlydisconnected.com. And as you know, he preaches relentlessly about the skills gap and the value of hard work. He's also a huge proponent of skilled trades, which I endorse 100%, because somewhere along the line, the nobility of manual labor, becoming an expert, and working with the hands has gotten lost. In fact, when I had this discussion with my own kids, I framed it this way. Grant, Audrey, think of trade not as a noun, but as a verb. And of course they're like, Dad, what are you talking about? I said, all right, well think about it. When you walk into an employer and you say, I want you to pay me $50,000, you need to have something you can trade in that's worth $50,000. So he looks at you and says, okay, what can you trade me for a $50,000 salary? Well, I've got critical thinking skills, and a semester of English Lit, and I majored in business management so I can manage your business. Next! The good news for me is that for the first time, my kids actually listen and spend half their day during their junior and senior years attending regular high school, and the other half of their day at our local trade school, Polaris Career Center, specializing. Grant in precision CNC engineering, and Audrey in digital art and design, learning the Apple suite of professional products and tools of the trade before moving on to Ohio Media School, where she continued specializing in digital media, video editing, and broadcasting. So now, at the age of 19, she's instantly hireable and valuable because she has something to trade an employer. And nobody ever asked about the grade she got now. So, as I'm coming down the home stretch here, I realize I'm proposing nothing short of a radical, revolutionary reversal of America's current educational philosophy. I also realize that hundreds of keynotes and conferences have already wrestled with many of these same issues, but they've consistently failed to make real, lasting impact for two reasons. One, they're treating the symptoms and not the root cause. And two, they're attacking these problems individually rather than recognizing they're all connected. The root cause is the error of our governing educational philosophy, attempting to teach every kid everything, and resulting in broad, bland, shallow generalists versus teaching the basics and then strategically guiding them onto specialized pathways to become skilled experts based on their strengths. As long as these separate economic forums and roundtables in business and academia and social services continue to tackle student debt, depression, drug addiction, suicide, workforce participation, skilled trades, and the massive skills gap between education and employment as individual siloed problems without recognizing they're all related and all stem from the same flawed educational philosophy, then we'll never make any real progress. The reality is, these are not single, discrete, cyclical problems. These are integrated, generational, structural problems requiring a massive systematic realignment between educational preparation and employment application. But there's a third reason. A reason no one would dare talk about in polite company. But as you can see, I've got a bad case of male pattern boldness, so why stop now? Here goes. To truly fix this problem, to focus on a path, become a highly skilled expert and specialize, you're going to have to say no. Remember, committing to a path means saying no to most things, good things, in order to say yes to the most important things. Americans hate the word no. In fact, if you want to find out just how explosive this is, start your next meeting by asking, which should be a higher priority? Requiring students to invest 2 years learning the Portuguese language, or 2 years learning a programming language? Good luck. There is reason for hope, as little by
by little, various voices in a variety of industries are starting to push back as they independently uncover big data patterns and trends, which increasingly challenge the Kool-Aid of the status quo. In his bombshell 2018 article, The Rise of the Expert Economy, Civic Enterprise's Bruce Reed writes, quote, "Technology has taken us from the information age to the too much information age." Sound familiar? And noting that 90% of organizations agree that specialized talent is essential to the long-term viability, and that firms continue to have difficulty finding and recruiting specialized talent. The report goes on to detail how firms like GLG, AlphaSites, and ThirdBridge, along with GE and PricewaterhouseCoopers, have organized a network of nearly 1.5 million experts who get hired on demand for what they know and do best. Why? Because traditional methods for finding specialized talent don't work. Still not convinced? Okay, how about this one? Global consulting firm Korn Ferry just released their landmark 2018 Thought Leadership Manifesto entitled Future of Work, the Global Talent Crunch. And bolded on the front page of this 52-page report, they wrote, quote, "The talent crunch and imminent skilled labor shortage could ultimately shift the global balance of economic power by 2030 if left unaddressed, and could cost nations trillions in unrealized annual revenues." Writing about this article in the Journal a few days later, author Diane Schaffhauser wrote, "Korn Ferry suggests that companies themselves recognize their responsibility to train workers and encourage governments to rethink education programs to generate the talent pipelines the industry will require. For example, some organizations are hiring students out of high school and college, as they can be recruited at a lower cost and with the expectation that they'll do the training to help graduates and prepare them for a new company, culture, and ways of working." How did we get here? Well, remember, over the past 20 years, America has endured 2 brutal recessions. And what's one of the first things cut during a downturn? The training budget. So at the very time industries are getting more complex, specific, and nuanced, they cut training. So what happened after the last recession ended? Well, firms tried hiring, but quickly realized that few candidates had the depth of skills required for their specialized niche. So they either decided to use robotics to automate processes, or they started building their own in-house training, boot camps, and apprenticeships, customized for the unique environment specifications, which is a long way of saying they've basically given up hope that workers will show up with the required skills, so they're realigning their hiring expectations to recognize reality. What's interesting is that Diane finishes by saying, "The Korn Ferry report offers little direct guidance for addressing the skills gap. However, it advised governments to make talent strategy a key priority and take steps now to educate, train, and upskill their existing workforces." So, to Korn Ferry's credit, they do understand it's going to take a concerted government-sized effort to move the needle, and I hope they do, because folks, the problems resulting from the skills gap are bad and getting worse. In 2018, Americans shattered all-time records with $1 trillion in credit card debt, $1.2 trillion in auto loans and leases, and leading the way, $1.5 trillion in student loan debt, with the cost of college rising over 1,200% since 1978. It's increased 10 times faster than the cost of a new car. In 2018, the cost for 1 year of public college is $21,000, and for private, $47,000 for 1 year. And again, I'm not against college, but if you're spending $200,000 for a degree and you're still not equipped with a hireable skill, you have to have a serious discussion about aligning expected outcomes and your return on investment. Here's the bottom line. I want to make America's education, employers, enterprises, and economy great for everyone, even those who've given up. I can't do it alone. I need your help. Talk about what you've heard here today. Share with people of influence. If you're watching this video online or on YouTube, like it, tweet it, share it with your friends. Because it's going to take a moonshot movement to truly bring about change. What's our alternative? Clearly what we're doing is not working, and it's only going to get worse. Our kids are over-medicated and over-educated, and and languishing in an educational purgatory somewhere between enlightenment and entitlement.
The fact is, we've got more individuals, more industries, and way more information than ever. They don't call it big data for nothing. But here's the good news. While big data can be the problem, it can also be the solution. It's a problem if we let it overwhelm us as we try to learn everything. We end up drowning in data. But if we harness and leverage the power of technology, we can now customize and curate curricula based on the unique strengths of kids and unique needs of companies as we strategically work to close the skills gap.
And if you want to learn more about this, you can Google my 12-step plan for overcoming academic addiction called the STEM Manifesto with one M. I think you'll enjoy it.
So in closing, let me summarize. You can't learn everything. So give up. Once you admit there's just too many people, professions, and petabytes of data to learn it all, you're then emancipated to do this wonderfully freeing thing. Prioritize. Nice to haves, need to haves. And then specialize. Take the first 8 years of school to learn the basics, and then partner with teachers to introduce a new progress report model, which goes, I've got good news and I've got great news. The good news is that your kid is struggling in this area, so maybe that's a sign to not go that direction. But the great news is that your kid seems to really have a gift for writing, or building, or drawing things, or leading discussions. So we collaborate with teachers to mitigate the things you struggle with and celebrate where you excel.
Invest those first 8 years to actively uncover your gifts, abilities, and strengths, and then define and pursue a pathway which focuses as deeply as possible in that area. Don't let yourself be deluded or deluded into thinking keeping your options open and never committing to a path is a good idea. Remember, America doesn't have an education gap. We have a skills gap, an expertise gap. And the reason is because our philosophy is designed to produce broad, shallow generalists. So let's do the opposite. Employers are begging for high-skilled workers with deep domain expertise. These are vertical words. They don't want dull and broad. They want sharp, focused talent.
They're more interested in how you measure up than how you measure out. Remember, an axe has two sides. Which one's more useful for chopping wood? So let's push for internships and apprenticeships and all the other ships that prioritize focusing on a specific pathway to acquire actual skill and expertise in a specific domain which has value in the marketplace.
Why? Because we can finally connect students looking for targeted pathways and supervisors looking for talent pipelines. Just think of all the other problems we can solve and the hope we can bring to those Americans who need it most.
When your shoulder needs surgery, who do you see? A specialist. Here in Cleveland, nobody cares Jim Thome only had 19 steals over 22 seasons. He's in the Hall of Fame because he belted 612 home runs. When he focused on his strengths, his weaknesses didn't matter. So stop trying to be all things to all people. Focus on being the best version of yourself. Your mother was right. You are special.